All right, hello everyone and welcome to the channel. Today's project is going to be a 3-inch lift kit getting installed on my 2019 Ford F150. I picked this truck up a little over 2 months ago, somewhere around there, and I've been eagerly wanting to do something to kind of make it my own, and part of that is going to be this 3-inch lift. The lift we're going to be using for this is a rough country 3-inch suspension lift. The rear portion of the lift is going to be a lift block. This is pretty standard for most lifts until you get into the above 4 or 6-inch range. Then you start looking at springs. But for the rear of this, is going to be a lift block. The front lift on this is going to be these beefy N3 premium lifted struts. So the reason I chose this lift was for this reason. I didn't want to do just a spacer or 11-link kit. I wanted a little bit more, and I opted to go with this rough country lift because it was affordable. It's a pretty well priced lift for what you get. I think the value is really good. Based on the reviews I saw, I think it's going to work out well for what I'm looking for. Getting that lift, a little bit of lift, a little bit bigger, aggressive tire, and still retaining some of the original ride quality is what I'm going for. So yeah, we'll get started. I've been really looking forward to doing this, so this is going to be good. Okay, so the tools we're going to be using for this lift kit install, most of this is basic hand tools. I'm assuming since you're considering tackling this project, you probably have a lot of this. Shouldn't be too much of an issue with most of the tools. In 1/2 inch, probably going to want a breaker bar, 1/2 inch drive ratchet, and I used an 18-21 and a 22 millimeter deep deep well sockets in 1/2 inch. Also a swivel in 1/2 inch helped out. Not needed, but helped out. In 3/8, 3/8 drive ratchet, 8 millimeter 10, 13, 15, and 18. All of those in deep. I think you could probably get away with all the deep. You might need a shallow, but the ratchet I didn't use much because I was using the impact, but it did need that once or twice. Metric wrenches, so 8, 15, 18, 19, and a 21. So standard set of metric wrenches will get you through. Something to tie up the brake caliper. I use mechanics wire or baling wire. You can really use anything that you can find around the house that'll work. Just needs to be fairly strong to hold up the caliper. A coat hanger would work well. A pair of pliers. Use these to pull out the push-in plugs. A body clip removal tool or even a flat blade screwdriver will get you through that. Hammer, some penetrating fluid. I did use a little anti-seize on the reassembly on a few things. I really like anti-seize. Not needed, but it's just a bonus. Then a little bit of the odd stuff, a 5 millimeter Allen for the ABS sensor, and then a vacuum pump for the IWE actuator. So the vacuum pump and the Allen key are probably well, I don't know that an Allen key is oddball, I guess. The vacuum pump is probably the only oddball one. Jack and jack stands, definitely going to need those. And that's it for the basic tools. If you have an impact, helps greatly. Not needed. If you don't have an impact, that's fine. I think you'll just end up using more penetrating oil and a little bit longer of, it'll take a little bit longer. But all right, that's it. Okay, so we have our truck all jacked up here. We're ready to get started. First thing we did after we secured the the truck up on jack stands. We've got the wheels off. In the directions, it tells you about this, but the power steering assist needs to be unplugged. There's a picture of it here. Just go ahead and plug these. Just pull these two red tabs out, and they'll come right out, those two plugs. So after we get that done, basically some prep work that you can do, a couple things just to soak some of the harder nuts that might give you a hard time with some penetrating oil. I don't need to do that down there, but ideally, if you have a day or two ahead of time, you can do that. It shouldn't be too bad depending on the age of your vehicle, but my top of my struts nuts, these bolts or nuts rather, up here are a little bit rusted, so not too bad, but it's a good idea to do that anyway. The other thing I like to do, and this isn't necessary, but I'm going to go ahead and spray down this brake rotor as well as the brake pads and the caliper just to clean off the dust. Not necessary, but a little bit of brake clean. I'll clean those off just to keep the dust down when I take that off. The other thing that I'm going to go ahead and do, if I find my marker, is I'm going to mark the rotor before I pull it off so that when I put it back on, it goes back in the same spot. Not critical, but it's just a good habit to get into when you're taking apart machine pieces that are fitting together, anything like that. So again, this is, if I had a wobble in my rotor, a slight wobble, and I put that on in a different spot, it may make it worse. It might make it better, but it may change it. So if I don't have an issue and I put it back in the same spot, I shouldn't have an issue going forward. So if I don't have an issue and I move it slightly, it may cause you some issues. Again, very minor, nothing crazy, but it's just a good habit to get into. So I'm going to mark one stud, and then I'm going to mark that. So that way it goes back on, and this surface and the hub are matched up the same as they were before. So that's a little bit of the prep work I'm going to do. I'm also going to have whatever I'm going to use to tie up this brake caliper. We're going to take this brake caliper off. I'm going to get that ready so that when I get that off, it's going to be right there. I don't need to go searching for it, because once you get this off, you don't want to have any pressure on your brake lines. So it's good to hang it up somewhere out of the way, and you keep that pressure off that. All right, so once we have all that ready, we're going to go ahead and start disassembling. Basically, our goal here is this upper control arm is going to come off. Ultimately, we want to get this strut assembly out, and to do that, we have to take the tie rod end off. The axle is going to come out eventually. We're going to do that towards the end. The whole brake caliper comes off, not just the caliper, but also the housing. So that's going to come off. We'll get that put away. And this whole assembly is going to swing out of the way and then lower, which is going to enable us to get our strut out. So first thing we're going to start with is unhooking all of our brake lines, vacuum lines, and anything that's attached to this assembly, including the brake assembly. We're going to remove that. The rotor is going to come off, tie rod end, and then we'll start loosening up this. Sway bar also has to come off. Sway bar link. Sway bar doesn't have to come off. The link get loosened up. All right, so we're going to get started on that. So we got our brake caliper off, tied up over here, rotor off, dust shield, off. There's 3 bolts there. Our ABS sensor is the 5mm bolt. We got that out, and we removed the clips. So we basically just detach this ABS line from everything all the way up to this upper, the upper control arm area, because the clip in there just kind of gets in the way of pulling that out. Our vacuum line for the oh, it's IW something, the actuator in the that hooks up the axle. And we got our sway bar loose from the bottom. Upper control arm is loose from our hub assembly here. This one does not have any tension on it. The bottom control arm does with the strut. So this will want to spring up, but if you loosen the bolts just a little on each side, on the upper control arm, that tension will go away and you can just move this freely. We're not going to take those out just yet because it's a lot easier to get them out once we have the strut out. We loosened up the bottom bolts for the strut. We did not take those off just yet. Just have them loose. Same thing with the top nuts for the strut. I have 2 of them off. I have 1 on there, just holding that together for now. So now the axle itself, we're going to remove. That's going to allow the hub assembly to pull down and out of the way. We pull the strut out. This is the part where we need the vacuum pump. We're going to hook our vacuum pump up to the back of that, put some vacuum to it, and that'll disengage the actuator in there. It'll just make it a lot easier for pulling that axle out without potentially damaging that actuator. So that's the process that's called for on that. So we're going to go ahead and do that now. Okay, so we're going to get our axle cap off. You can use a pair of pliers or anything you can get in there. And it's just a metal cap, like a wheel bearing cap. And we'll get that popped off. Oh, looks like I dented it or somebody else did before. That's fine though. We'll take 13mm. We're not going to take that off just yet until we put our vacuum to this actuator, IWE actuator. So you want to put your hose on the bigger port. There's 2 ports on the back. The bigger of the 2 is the one you want. We're going to pump this up to about 24 inches of vacuum. That's good. We're just going to set that off to the side. While that's holding the vacuum on there, we can go ahead take our axle nut all the way off, and then we're going to work our axle out. Just like that. As we lower this control arm, this will pull down in a way, and that axle will come all the way out. And then we'll go ahead and take our strut out. Take the top control arm off, since that's getting replaced. And then we'll start assembling. Now that we have our axle out, our assembly, this is going to stay on the bottom, on the ball joint. We're going to leave that on. We're just going to pry down on the control arm now, and that'll pull down from the top frame mount, and that'll allow our strut to come out. So we'll go ahead and do that. And get that top out. pry down a little bit more. All right, so that's almost out. What are you doing here, buddy? There we go. All right. So the OEM strut assembly, this one's in good shape. I think this one might have been replaced. Anyway, so now that we got that done, we can go ahead and change out our upper control arm. This kit, you do get new upper control arms, so we'll change that out and get those put on there, and then we'll start reassembling. We got our upper control arm out. We're going to go ahead and put our new one in. These are sized differently to allow for the different angle with the lift. So this and the strut were the reasons I chose this kit. Kind of keep the proper OEM form and fit. I thought it was a good option. So this just goes back in with the original hardware. The bolts go in through the inside. Just get those lined up, and pretty straightforward going in. Sometimes if you turn those, it helps. So we're just going to snug these up. Actually, I shouldn't have put this in, but we're going to leave it here. No, this is fine. What am I saying? So we'll snug those up. Go ahead and put our new strut in there. We'll get everything tight on the strut, and then we're going to reverse everything that we did coming off. We're going to go ahead and put the vacuum back on this IWE, slide the axle back in, reassemble everything. Once we get that strut up in there, we'll go ahead and tighten these upper control arm bolts. I just don't want to tighten them now because I want that to be able to move a little bit if it needs to. One thing we didn't talk about that I had to do on this side, I didn't have to do it on the other side because of the sway bar. I initially put the top control arm through the hub assembly, the top, prior to putting the sway bar on, and that allowed me to push up on this unit because the sway bar wasn't pushing down on it. On this side, I did the sway bar link. I tightened it up first because I actually had trouble doing it the other way. But because of that, I needed to jack up the lower control arm to bring the hub assembly up to meet the upper control arm. It didn't take much. Excuse me. Just when you're doing that, just make sure you're not taking it too high up off of the jack stands or anything like that. Also, a good time to mention, when you're placing your jack stands, make sure you raise it up enough to accompany the difference in height that you're adding with the lift and the new tires. When I jacked it up, I only jacked it up enough to take off the old tires. So when I went to put the new tires on, I needed to jack up the whole truck, another 2-3 inches. So just keep that in mind. That happened to me on the other side. So we're all set on this side though. So I'm going to go ahead and finish tightening up this. We have our top nuts are tight. We're going to tighten up the bottom strut, reassemble the tie rod end, backing plate, ABS line, hook our lines back up on the hub assembly, and then brake caliper assembly, and the rotor. I'm going to go over everything, make sure everything's tight, and then we're all good. Going good. Pretty sweet. No major issues. So going good. We got everything back together. I just went through everything just to make sure it's tight. I like to kind of just run through the sequence of things that I did. I know I took off and just make sure they're tight. I remember tightening all those. Go through it, make sure I hit everything. Now I know we're good. So we got that done. We'll go ahead and throw the tire on and call the front done. Got this just right with the height, I think. Oh yeah. We'll go ahead and put our nuts on this. I gotta go get them because I don't have them here, and then we'll move on to the back. We're on to our back, the rear end now. This part goes a lot easier, or a lot quicker anyway. The front wasn't too bad, so this part is a little bit quicker. Basically, all we're doing here, we have the frame of the truck, or the body and frame, supported with jack stands, and then we're supporting the rear end with the jack. We're going to loosen up our U-bolts on the axle. That's going to separate it from the springs. We're going to disconnect our shocks, take those out. We're replacing those. So we're going to take shocks off first, loosen up our U-bolts on both sides, shocks off both sides, and then we're going to lower the rear end down. Take these blocks out and put our new blocks in, new U-bolts. We'll raise the axle back up to meet it to the springs and tighten them up, put shocks back on, and we're good to go. So let's get rolling. Okay, so we got both sides, shocks off, U-bolts off, disconnected. So as soon as we lower this rear end down, it'll separate from the leaf springs on each side. So the frame, again, the frame is sitting on jack stands, 2 on each side so that's going to support that. We're going to use the jack to lower the rear end. Just enough space to get these factory blocks out, put our aftermarket kit blocks in, and then just raise it up. So let's go ahead and lower this down. It's going to go nice and slow. Just going to give everything a check. We're good. No issues. All right. I probably should have left that other side hooked up. to keep it from twisting. But let me get the lock out of here. Let me get my hammer. Just want to make sure there's no dirt in there. Clean that off. I'm going to have to get a jack under the front of the rear end and twist that. I should have left the other side connected, and I didn't do that. So there's a tip for you. It's not a major deal. It's going to take a little extra effort. That's all. Okay, so yeah, all I did was I put the U-bolts back on that temporarily. I snugged them up just to keep the rear end from tilting forward. So yeah, if you're doing this, just do one side at a time. You will need to loosen it up just to get to help you lower the rear end. I mean, it'll probably come down enough, but I would loosen them up on one side. Just don't take them all the way off. So we'll put our new blocks in. We're going to go ahead and jack this up. We want those holes to line up. Here we go. That was good. Put our new U-bolts on. This OEM piece stays. I like to wear gloves sometimes, but sometimes they're just too much trouble for what they're worth. So we'll get these back on. These nuts, tighten this up, and then we'll do the other side. And we'll come through and put our shocks on, and then we're good to go. Clean those up, just snug them up. Once you get the other side done, you can go ahead and tighten them down. Once you make sure everything's in a good position, you can go ahead and tighten them down. All right, let's go do the other side. All right, so we're going to go ahead and get our shocks put on. These are pressurized naturally, right? I mean, that's what they do. They absorb shock, so they have some pressure. They'll be wrapped up with something to keep them compressed. What I like to do is just get them one end in, and then the other one, we'll get it and let it just kind of work its way up into position, and then we'll throw our bolt in. Now these aren't too bad given the area, but if you're in a confined spot, sometimes you're not able to get a lot of leverage on it to push it back down. These aren't too bad though. And then we'll just cut the strap off and then tighten these up. We're good to go. There is often a debate about which end to put up or down, the body of the shock or the ram. They tell you in the instructions to put them on this way. I know there's a great debate about whether this end should point down and the body be up, or the body down and the ram up. So this is how they recommend installation. So. So here's a few before and after pictures, just kind of give you an idea of what changed and the new stance and how the tires fit overall with the 3-inch lift. These are 34-inch tires on 18x9 rims with a plus 12 offset. So you get a little bit, just a little outside the fenders, not too bad. And there's one with the overall stance. So all right, so we're back. It's a wrap on the F-150 lift, rough country 3-inch suspension lift. Really happy with how it turned out. I think overall it's a good quality lift and kept a lot of the OEM ride. It's not as good. It's not as what I would say like a cushy, soft ride. It's more of a sportier ride. So it definitely changed the ride. Kit overall, I thought was really good quality. Installation was quite simple, considering or compared to some other lift kits that I've done. This one's pretty straightforward, and which is odd as the vehicles get newer. Sometimes they can be a little bit more challenging, but this is pretty straightforward. Not really changing the lift points, you're just adding lift to it. So you're not dropping any of the suspension components. But I really like how it sits. I like the aggressive stance with the package that I went with the tires. So we'll talk a little bit about that. So the tires that I went with are 295 70 18s. They're like a 34-inch tire on 18x9 wheels, and they're a plus 12 offset, which I didn't know this at the time, but that's exactly what Rough Country developed this lift for, is that exact tire size, a 34-inch tire, a 9-inch wide rim, and on it with a plus 12 offset. And I like that stance. It gives you a wide enough stance, just enough to have that aggressive look, but not too wide where you're going to be throwing a lot of dirt and debris onto the side of the truck. There's no clearance issues, but it is close. It's really close. And for me, this is definitely as high as I would want to go. If you're on the fence about whether you want to go past a leveling kit and into something like the 3 or the 4, if you're not really sure, this is probably a good option. If you're wanting to get into 35-inch or bigger tires, you're going to have to go bigger. But to get you into that 33, 34-inch range, this is a good option. And I think it's a good option because you get the struts. And if your vehicle's older, maybe you have 50, 60,000 miles on it, that's a good option because your struts and shocks are probably wearing out anyway. So it could be a good upgrade for them. Yeah, again, it's not going to be OE quality ride, but it's pretty close. And like I mentioned, it's as close as I would want to get. For me, any more, it's too much for me. Where I'm at, I don't want to ride too bad. And take the practicality of it out. I still need to tow with it. That truck on its own tows really good, really well, better than my F-250 did. It's not going to handle the load the same way, but power-wise, it's way better than my F-250 was. But the miles per gallon do suffer with this package that I got on there now. I think about 2 miles per gallon, I'm getting less. I did drive it around. Went back and tightened everything up like they specified in the instructions. Everything was good, but I'll probably go back over it again after a few more 100 miles just to make sure. But overall, really good kit. Really happy with it. Price point was good. Installation was really good. Quality seems good. So all around, happy with it. So if you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, and hit that subscribe button for more videos like this. I have a couple F-150 bullnose projects coming up. I have a brick nose F-350 dump truck that I'm going to work on next, so we'll get that video out. That is going to be a full cab swap. I am taking the cab off, putting a new cab on. We're going to be going through the engine. That's a 460 engine. We're going to be going through that, kind of refreshing that up. So check back for that. That's going to be a good one. Also, a couple bullnose builds. I actually have 3 bullnose trucks, and I hope to get to 2 of them. 2 of them are just going to be pretty basic daily driver. Just going to go through them, make sure they're good, patina type finish. The other one's going to be a full-on restore that I'm going to make. It's not going to be show quality, but driver show quality, or maybe local show quality. But so that's going to be coming probably not until the winter time, but check back for that. Go ahead and hit the subscribe button. See more videos like that. And thank you.